Oh, goody.
All right, what's going on, everybody? Zombies here again, and today we're back with another Marvel Snap video. So today we're checking out the new season cards, doing a little bit of a season overview. Going to talk about some thoughts about the cards, about the spotlights, all that good stuff. So yeah, February, kind of a sleeper season if you watch that review, or I mean, even if you just interacted with the cards in February and the caches, you knew it was kind of a sleeper month, and myself and many other people recommended save your caches for March, because March looks way better. And well, a few things have changed, but in general, March still looks way better than last month was looking. So let's take a look at the weeks, at the cards, all that good stuff. Quick overview of the weeks. So Agamotto is our season pass card. I'm really excited for this card. I'll talk about him in just a moment, but first week we have Isan, Beta Ray Bill, and Wiccan. Second week we have Starbrand, Scar, and Fastos. Third week we have Firehair, Cassandra Nova, and Nico. And the fourth week we have Khonshu, Scorn, and Corvus Glaive. There is also a bonus card this season via an event. That is going to be the first Ghost Rider, who looks pretty sick, and he is going to be given out via High Voltage, which is returning to the game on March 21st. So if you're a big High Voltage fan, that is something to look forward to. I think the first Ghost Rider, we'll talk about him a little later, but I think the first Ghost Rider is probably the second best event card we've ever gotten, only behind Cassandra Nova. And I don't think it is that far behind Cassandra Nova. I think this card looks really strong. And while a lot of the event cards were, I wouldn't call them filler, but a lot of the event cards have felt, a little less impactful, like Lasher or Agony. But the first Ghost Rider, I think, is not going to be one of those cards. I think it's going to be very sick. Some numbers have changed from the initial data mine. This image is a little out of date, so I updated it. Eson's a 10 power card, Wiccan's 6, and Scar is a 7/12, as opposed to a 6/10. So those numbers have changed, and you'll see that reflected in the Spotlight weeks. But let's talk about the individual cards and Agamotto. I am really excited for Agamotto. So Agamotto puts 4 Ancient Arcana into your deck. Now, this is going to be a new card type. We're used to calling them spells because that's what the data mines were calling them at first. But apparently the term they're going to use for this card type is going to be skills. So what do you need to know about skills? It's pretty simple. Skills do not have any power. That's why the power is X'd out here. In some of the data mine website stuff, they have 0 power. But if you actually look at them in game in the trailer, they have no power. And you might be wondering, all right, well, what difference does that make? The main one is cost reduction stuff. So things like Ravonna won't be discounting these. You can't flip them with negative, that kind of stuff. Skills also use the new banish keyword. So all of these skills say banish this after the effect goes off. And it's essentially kind of like Kang, where they're just removed from the game. So you're not going to be able to copy these. You're not going to be able to Absorbing Man it. Or you're not going to be able to play it in a Wong lane, for example. So these are limited to a singular use. Then they are sent to the Banish Zone, where presently you can't interact with them at all. Maybe that'll change eventually, but for now, Banish cards are just gone. If you're familiar with Exile and Magic the Gathering, it's pretty much the same kind of thing. But what are the 4 Ancient Arcana? So we have a Temporal Manipulation, 1 cost, give Agamotto +3 power, put him into your hand if he's not in play. Then we have Winds of Watum, 2 cost, on reveal, afflict an enemy card here with -5 power and move it to the right. Then we have Bolts of Balthak, and that one is going to be a 3 cost on reveal. Next turn you get +4 energy. And then last and certainly not least, we have Images of Icon, 4 cost on reveal. Transform your other cards here into copies of the highest power one. These are really neat cards. I like this card a lot. And it's worth noting that we've had some cards before, right, that make your deck larger. But they're both very different than the one we're getting here. Thanos was the first one, right? Thanos put a bunch of stuff in your deck, but the stuff he put in your deck were stones, and most of the stones were drawing cards. So even though you had a bigger deck, you were still seeing a lot of the cards in your deck. Arsham was on the other end of that spectrum. Arsham put even more cards into your deck, so there was that inherent level of randomness that was being used as a downside to the upside of getting that extra energy Arsham provides. But there were so many cards in the deck that it's just a very different playing experience than most other decks in Snap. So I'm really interested to see where this card lands, because the spells or the skills all seem really strong. But, you know, if you're newer to card games, one of the things that is a core, you know, pillar of pretty much every card game is every card game has, you know, a minimum deck slot requirement. Snap, we just have a flat requirement. You can't put more than 12 cards in your deck in Snap. In a bunch of other card games, you can go over that number, but nobody does it. And why does nobody do it? Because you want to have the smallest number of cards in your deck, so you have the highest chance of getting all the good cards in your deck. So naturally, when you're putting cards in your deck that aren't, you know, drawing you and helping you cycle through the deck, the odds of you getting the best card you're looking for are going to be lower than in a normal 12-card deck compared to an Agamotto deck. So the question ends up being, are the spells in Agamotto strong enough to justify their inclusion? And I think they will be. I think out of the 4 spells here, the ones that really stand out to me are Winds and Images. Images can do some really messed up things. It is the highest cost one, but there are some 3 and 4 drop cards where if you make 2 additional copies of it, some ones off the top of my head, Cassandra Nova, Rocket and Groot, Galacta, Gwenpool, the list goes on, but there are or just do it to a big target, like a Mockingbird or something. Mockingbird, Sasquatch, Cull Obsidian, what have you. But just this card can essentially just win a lane or put you in a really good position to win multiple lanes. So I think Images is going to be the really impactful one. Winds is great because it's kind of just like a 2/5, right? I think if you could just play Winds in a deck, you would. It's a 2/5 that disrupts the position of your opponent. That seems really quite good. Obviously, Luke Cage is a little bit of a concern, but that's just going to happen with negative affliction stuff. Bolts, I also think, isn't bad. Bolts is kind of like a big Psylocke where you're taking a turn off and doing nothing, but you're going to be able to play a lot of stuff on the following turn. So I think there's potential there. And then Temporal Manipulation, I think, is the weakest of the bunch, but also it's the cheapest. It's kind of like you're playing a 1/3 that's going to guarantee you find one of your big threats every game, making Agamotto a 5/13, or I guess more accurately like a 6/13, right? Because you paid the 1 energy for the 3 power and to find him. But I think all of these are strong. And what's cool about Agamotto is I think this card can go into so many decks. There's just so much potential building around this card. And it's also, I think, going to make King Eitri finally more of a playable card because he can draw these skills, which seems really strong. Now, by the time this video goes up, the patch should be live. I imagine some cards are going to change in the patch to work or not work with skills. A few cards have already changed. One of them was Gwenpool, so Gwenpool's buff won't hit the skills. And I'm sure they're probably going to have some in the patch that do that too. A big one that I'm curious about is like Cassandra Nova, because these cards obviously don't have power. So is Cassandra Nova able to steal from a card that doesn't have power in the deck? I mean, the current text would make you think yes, but there's going to be a patch tomorrow or today, if by the time you're watching this in video form. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see. Some of those cards are probably going to change, but we'll see what ends up changing when the patch hits. But yeah, I'm pretty high on this card. I think it's interesting. I think there are a lot of ways to build around it, and it's the first card in a long time where I don't really know how this one's going to shake out because we just haven't really had another card like it. It's introducing a whole new card type. It's exciting and interesting, and I think it's one of the cooler Season Pass cards we've gotten in a while. What about the non-Agamotto cards? What about the Spotlight Week cards? Let's take a look at those. So first up, Isan. A lot of people were excited about this card. It was really busted looking. You're going to have this whole restriction about not playing cards of the same power, but it got changed. It is now a 6/10. After each turn, put a created card from your hand here. I don't think this card is necessarily bad, but it feels like it was made for Arsham. So if you're a big Arsham fan, this will probably be a decent thing to play in it. You slam it down on turn 5 and it'll pull 2 of your random Arsham cards into its lane. That's probably going to do a lot of the work of winning a lane for you. Will this card work outside of Arsham? Maybe. One of the other obvious synergies is using Esson to cast the Agamotto skills, because those are created by cards, right? So you find a way to ramp out Esson, hopefully by turn 5, and then maybe you get him to cast 2 of the skills for you. But yeah, I'm not super high on this card. I think it's probably good in Arsham. I think it'll require quite a bit of testing to see if it's good elsewhere. But I think if it is good outside of Arsham, you're going to have to ramp it out. Because just playing this on turn 6 and having it pull a card down or one of the skills down, I don't think is good enough to justify running it. So I think you really are going to have to build around this card. You're going to have a way of like ramping it out, and you're going to have some form of card generation, whether Agamotto is enough to do that, or if you have to run like some packages with it, like, I don't know, like an Iron Patriot, a White Queen, a Cable. There's a bunch of cards you could run with this for some payoff. I'm excited to try it out though. I do think there could be something cool with it, with a little bit of ramp and card generation package, and just using this as like one of the potential finishers. But it feels like this was a card very much made with Arsham in mind. I wonder if that's something they're going to do with future Celestials later down the line, or if other ones will try and be more different. But if you're an Arsham fan, this seems like an easy get. If you're not an Arsham fan, I would probably wait and see a little bit. In terms of the other cards in the spotlights, Beta Ray Bill. Bill has never been that great. However, one of the cards coming up, Firehair, could give him a little bit more relevance, so might be okay. And then Wiccan's pretty good. Wiccan, lost to power last OTA, but still a really good card. And I think if you like playing his style of deck, which is like curving out and then getting extra energy, that's a pretty good card to go for. I also like the variant, so I'm going to be going for the Spotlight myself. But yeah, definitely for the new card, I think it's an easy pickup if you're an Arsham enjoyer. If not, it's probably more of a wait and see. Next up, we have Starbrand Week featuring Scar and Fastos. Starbrand is a 3/10 ongoing. Your opponent has +3 power at each other location. So the location Starbrand is not in will be granting your opponent +3 power, but he's a 3/10, so massively overstated card. And you're probably going to want to shut off this ability with a Enchantress or a Sauron. Yeah, or a Sauron. Use Sauron to shut off its ability. So maybe this brings back a Sauron deck. We saw some people experimenting with those not too long ago. Or this could be used in Surtur, right? Surtur got nerfed pretty badly, but maybe Starbrand gives it a little bit of extra hopium that it can get by and still keep working. Scar is also in this week. Scar has, even with his nerf and the nerf to Surtur, Scar has actually become more played, right? Because it's seeing play in Hela now, and obviously you have some synergy with Starbrand. So if you're interested in playing the Surtur Scar stuff, or maybe you just want to pick it up for Hela, this seems like a pretty good week. Fastos is kind of ass. Many people call him Astos because the card kind of sucks. He's not like the worst card in the world, but biggest problem with Fastos is he's really a card you need to play on turn 3. He's not the best statted 3-drop, and you don't really have a guaranteed outcome. Sometimes it's important to get the negative or the cost reduction rather than the power. So there's just a lot of unpredictable outcomes with this card, and it gets worse every turn you wait. So I think definitely the weakest of the bunch. Not a terrible card to own, but really a card that has been a bit without a home for a while. But yeah, Starbrand, Scar, both pretty good. If you're interested in those cards, I think it's a pretty solid week. Then we have Firehair. This is the card I am probably most scared of this season. Firehair seems super duper spooky. We saw in the reveal trailer for this season, Firehair's ability goes off multiple times. A lot of people were theorizing this was going to be kind of a one and done ability. But it's not. It just keeps going off. So I think you're going to see some decks emerge that are like 10 Tempo Destroy deck. You might remember that back from when Lady Deathstrike was first pioneering that archetype. And I feel like the Tempo Destroy deck ended up becoming what we know today as the Mill deck. And this card almost certainly goes in there. Basically, any deck with Agony wants this card. And this is the card I was alluding to earlier when talking about Beta Ray Bill. Because if you're playing Bill and Thor, you can play Thor on 3, Bill on 4, Jane on 5. And then turn 6, you play Firehair, the Hammers, and Misery. Misery will re-trigger your hammers. So the hammers go off once. Misery re-triggers. And then Firehair will re-trigger them again. So yeah, it's pretty sick. I'm assuming I said the wrong one. Oops. But yeah, you guys knew what I meant. Misery, not Agony. But yeah, I think this card is actually the scariest card of the season and the most likely to get nerfed. This is gonna enable some seriously degenerate stuff. And I think you're going to see a bunch of more mid-rangey destroy decks built around this that have some powerful on-reveal effects, and then use things like Venom and Carnage to eat those powerful cards and have Firehair re-trigger them. It's pretty cool. Scary, but cool. Also pairing this up with the new Joaquin Phoenix as a 2-drop is really, really strong. Putting, a bunch of rocks in someone's deck or Iceman, and then you double up on it with Misery, and then Firehair does it again, and it's spooky. Even in mill, just like Yondu milling the deck, Cable stealing a card, then destroy them, and then do it again, and getting multiple demons. It's Torres. Oh yeah, it's Torres, not Phoenix. You're right. I thought that didn't sound right. Close enough. But yeah, this card is scary, man. This card is legitimately scary, and as far as like card ratings, I think this is the scary card of the season. Probably this, followed by Agamotto, in terms of like things that I think are gonna have the biggest impact on the game. And in terms of its Spotlight Week, it's pretty good. I mean, if you're a long-term player and you were around for the first Deadpool's Diner, this one might not be as good for you in terms of just raw cards, because Cassandra Nova, really great card, but a lot of people got her for free, and Nico's been around the block for a while, so probably not as great for longer-term players, but if you're someone who missed out on Cassandra Nova, I think this is a really good week, because they're both very good cards. And with some of the cards coming out, like Esson and Agamotto, Cassandra seems to be getting better again. So would recommend, keep an eye on Firehair. If any card is going to have a drastic change to the metagame, I think it's going to be this one. And then the last of these Spotlight cards we have during the week are going to be Khonshu. Khonshu is really interesting. So 6/5, when discarded, return in its next phase. On reveal, resurrect a card you discarded to another location with its power set to 5. So the other two forms are a 6/7 and then a 6/12, and the card it brings back will also have that number. So it'll resurrect it at 7 power and then 12. This card's really cool, and much like Firehair, I think this is doing something unique where, like Firehair is going to give us a twist on the Destroy archetype, I think Khonshu will give us a bit of a twist on the Discard archetype. We did kind of get one of those recently with Bullseye, but this is going to go in a different direction. I think this is going to be one where you want to discard, opponent's cards with obviously Moon Knight, but even Silver Samurai. Being able to discard like an Iron Man with Silver Samurai and then have Khonshu bring him back in another lane as a 12 power Iron Man sounds pretty gross. So that seems to be like the big appeal of the card to me. And yeah, I think it'll be pretty neat. My big concern with this card is Hela's really popular right now, and in its current form, it feels like you have to jump through more hoops to get value out of Khonshu, because you have to discard it twice, and then you also need to discard something else to get that value out of it. So my concern with this card is that if Hela is as strong as it is right now, prior to the new season starting when this card comes out, Hela might just eclipse it. No pun intended. But, this card's the last week of the season, and if Hela stays nearly as good and as popular as she is right now, she's probably going to get nerfed. So if that does happen, I imagine they will nerf Hela, and that'll open up some more space for Khonshu to have a viable role in the metagame. But I like the design of this card. I think it's cool, and I'm excited to have a new way to mess around with destroy decks, with discard decks, to have this pretty cool payoff. I've always liked the idea of messing around with an Iron Man discard type thing ever since Silver Sam came out. And there is another card being added, we'll talk about in a second here, that could have very good synergy with this card. But the other cards during this week are Scorn and Corvus. So if you've been missing out on some of the discard cards, it seems like a really good week. Corvus doesn't see a ton of play, but who knows? Maybe it will when Khonshu comes out, because it lets you ramp into Khonshu, and discarding 2 cards might be good because you could hit Khonshu and then a thing for him to bring back. And then Scorn's been very, very good in both the Apocalypse and the Bullseye list, so a good one to get a hold of. So yeah, if you're a discard fan, seems like a good week. If not, easy pass. And then we have the first Ghost Rider. Now, in the video trailer, this was a 2/5. We'll probably find out tomorrow with the patch if it's actually a 2/5 or not. But for now, the old data mines are saying 2/6. Regardless, the card looks strong either way. It is on reveal, discard the lowest power card from your hand, remove that card's power from this. Before you get too excited about goblins, removing a negative power card from your hand will not buff this with power. It'll just take away 0. That has been confirmed. So you're not going to be getting a 14 power Ghost Rider off of a Hobgoblin, which probably for the best. I don't think we wanted to live in a world where that's happening. Nonetheless, this seems very interesting and a perfect thing to pair with Khonshu. Use this to discard your Gore, discard your Iron Man, get a decent body on the board, and then have a big thing for Khonshu to resurrect that gets a bunch of base stats and then uses the power of its that Khonshu is granting it for even more stats. So definitely seems like it'll find a home there for sure. Maybe it even finds a home in Hela at this point. Who knows? I don't think the current version of Hela needs it, but if Hela gets nerfed or something about the cards in that deck change, maybe it will end up using the first Ghost Rider as well. And what I really like about this card is that maybe this will result in us being able to play just like a 2 Ghost Rider deck. Being able to discard an impactful card with the first Ghost Rider and then bring it back with the regular Ghost Rider. Because this is a pretty, even if it's a 2/5, it's a pretty high tempo play that does something specific that you can build your deck around. So I like this card. I like this card a lot, and this is going to be in high voltage starting on March 21st. So pretty great free card to get from an event, and high voltage not nearly as difficult as some of the other events to actually like get the card from. So looking forward to this. There was some speculation about maybe another card coming this month, which we can see on the graphic, but I don't think that's going to end up happening. If anything changes there, I will post an update about it, but I think it's just going to be the first Ghost Rider for our bonus card this month. So yeah, those are the cards for the month of March, and I think it looks pretty sick. In terms of the individual cards themselves, I think the best ones of the month by far are going to be Firehair and Agamotto, but I think all the new cards this month are going to see a decent amount of play. But yeah, I think the spotlights were much better done this month. And they have a lot more good cards. They have cards that work together, and it just feels a lot better than the ones that we got in February. February felt bad. A lot of people were saving, and I think this is what people were saving for. Before we wrap up, we do want to take a quick look at the cards coming in April. So What If season is going to be our April season, leading with Captain Carter as the season pass card. She's a 4/2 ongoing. Your other cards in the back row here gain this card's power. She isn't going to work with the shield. They've already kind of debunked that, so don't expect her getting benefits from Sam and Cap's shield, but neat card, pretty cool. Obviously has synergy with some of the other Captain Americas, so that's neat. Then we have Goliath Week. Goliath is a 2/1 ongoing, gets +1 power for each other ongoing you have in play. New top tier Spectrum card. Seems very good. That one's coming with Cersei and Gwenpool. This is Gwenpool's first reappearance in Spotlights, so that's neat. Then we have Kahori, which is a 4/6 on reveal for each card in your hand. give a friendly card +1 power. So a little bit of support to the big hand type of archetype. And that one's being joined by Cull Obsidian and Hydra Bob. Decent week. Then we have the one I'm most excited for, Infinity Ultron, who's a 5/6. On reveal, add 2 Ultron Infinity Stones to your hands. The stones, I believe, are data mined as 3/3s, but they have way more powerful effects than the normal Thanos stones do. So that's pretty neat. And he's going to be joined alongside Cannonball and Pixie. Then we have Strange Supreme, who's a 2/0. Give +2 power whenever this merges. After each turn, merge one of your cards that didn't start into your deck into this. So a bit of support for merge cards, bit of a support for generation cards, which is interesting. He's going to be joined by Speed and US Agent. And then the last week we have Hydra Stomper, 3/1 ongoing, +1 power for each card you moved this game. So very powerful in move-based decks. Who knows, maybe this will finally be the card that makes Silksy play again, but I'm not holding my breath. And he's going to be joined by some move cards, fittingly, Aranya and Madam Web. As always, the data mine stuff is subject to change. They might change some stuff between now and then, but this is what we know of as of right now. Now, we have been getting event cards, the past few months, so maybe they'll run Diner again, maybe they'll run Sanctum again, maybe they'll do something to get us a bonus card, but right now we don't really know. But yeah, more really good cards coming up in April. So I think March and April look like a good time to be snapping if you care about interesting, impactful cards coming out. Looks like there are a lot of them. So let me know what you think in the comments below about the March and April seasons. Which ones are you going for? I'd love to hear it. But that's going to wrap it up for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, remember to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.